Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for spending your lunch with us. Today I wanted to bring to you the Business Propel webinar, the Master Series, and I have a special guest with me today, Michael Fox from KMT Partners. And a little bit about Propel before we get started. Business Propel is the next evolution in business assessment tools, offering an end-to-end view. This tool will shape your business for success. Leaving no stone unturned, this application will help you assess, refine your current methods to ensure your business is operating and performing in an optimal fashion. My name is Philip Paresis, and I'm the Digital Marketing and Community Manager for Business Propel. You can read a little bit about me on this slide, but I won't bore you anymore about me, and we'll jump into a quick tour of Business Propel. So once you do log in to Business Propel, you have the option to search for a business problem you might be having. For example, you can be having a problem around marketing, cash flow, etc. You'll be greeted with a diagnostic or action plans that you can take to actually help you fix your business. And this dashboard shows you the overall scores, etc. So as I mentioned, action plans to improve your business. You can see, depending on what you've searched, for example, create a budget, you can add this action plan. It will tell you who's actually prepared this action plan, and it will keep you to completing the tasks underneath these actions. If you wanted to create a business plan, a one-page business plan or a more comprehensive business plan, you can also do this through Business Propel. And as you can see, an example of the one-page business plan, you can add mission statements, start dates, end dates, and of course, adding goals. Adding goals you can also add the goals create the goals into actions. And this will help you make sure, this will help you stick to your business plan. And remember guys, on the right-hand side of our webinar, we have a chat, questions, and polls that will be coming up during the day. So do not hesitate to actually ask any questions. And of course, take the polls. I'll give you a warning when the polls are on, so you know they've come up. And please, I'm not sure if we can answer any questions or chats today, but if we can, we'll respond as soon as we can to you as they're going through the webinar. If you have any problems during the webinar, generally a quick refresh of your browser will fix any problems with the video and audio. And today, as I mentioned, I have Michael Fox with me from KMT Partners. And for over 30 years, he has focused on the success of his clients, designing wealth strategies for personal and business growth. Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Phil. It's nice to be here in Sydney with you. This use of Business Propel was based upon an outcome of a journey over the last 14 months for a young couple acquiring back literally their business and family farm. Previously, the business had been run by a syndicate of great friends with ambitions, but everybody had their own businesses and their own roles and had lost focus. So a deal came together where the legal structures were bought out, acquiring the land and the vines, picking up the wine operating company. The deal was actually almost an old classic South Australian wine company buy, where the land and everything else that came with it was great value, but the secret happened to be the real value of the wine stock. Coincidentally, there were some things along the way called tax losses, which are just a nice way for this group to actually make some money eventually when they can make some real profits. To see where they were, we basically decided to do a Business Propel diagnostic so that we could draw the new owners into understanding what they had bought after decades of experience in another business, and to try to identify what were the major risks and the major opportunities in the first instance. The acquisition of the business brought about a further reliance on the new owners of another business. They already have an existing business, and these two businesses are now competing for time of the primary drivers. That competition also extends to the funding of the business, and the funding of the business perhaps has a secret weapon in that in acquiring the land and the winery, we acquired the wine stock. The property itself, having been share farmed literally between the syndicate, had always been subject to views of what each partner thought as a priority. So one of the things that evolved was not so much conflict between the previous co-owners, but compromise. And compromise led to perhaps not achieving things in the optimum fashion in the views of now owners. That plus a dispersal of management of roles and responsibilities across finance, marketing, viticultural maintenance, etc., led to a whole disparity and now a complete lack of primary core information being available for it being recorded. So out of the diagnostics, we came up with an overall report that the business on average was fair to good. We found problems with people generally because this is a small business just being acquired. There's no team. We need to establish the people, roles and structures. Strategy.
Did they have any winery experience previously?
The people who bought the business have extensive wine experience, and Cesar a winemaker. He's a viticulturist of 30 years experience.
Yep.
So they have the capacity, and the spouse of the owner has also got a lot of experience now in the vineyards and with the winery, but she also has a cultural diversity of issues from the Western Pacific, which leads them into some very specific niche markets with a very unique story. And that's emerging as a strategy foundation. That's a major point for them. Their strategy came up rated as poor because it's the first time they've actually looked at strategy around this business. So it gives us a baseline from what to do. In terms of operations of running the business, they know what to do, how to do it. As a matter of fact, if given the resources to do it, they would probably get that up to being excellent very quickly. On their customers, as I've just said, the couple bring some cultural niche market opportunities there. They know how to sell. They've already done, in the process of buying out the business, some trial shows, etc. So they know what to sell to a market and how to sell their story. So that's needing to be put into place as a documented plan of where to go, but it's in good shape reasonably. Financials, yes, they have the financial resources. They have the working capital and the horsepower to pull money together. However, the deficiency in the money area is wine sitting in storage isn't cash in the bank. So that's an issue which will, over time, confront them. So what have we decided? Well, we've got to evaluate the market reaction to a specific global segment. These people have a specific variety of wine. They have a very specific capacity for where they will sell it. So we have to go and analyze that. The roles and responsibilities of the people, they have specific talents. One's very good at sales and understanding the market and the culture of where they're going to be selling. One knows how to create a premium vineyard and is a dab hand at making the wine, provided they gather together around them a quality team. They're reconsidering how they deal with this property. How are they going to do the viticultural practices around it? Do they go for quality or yield, or do they try to do that sort of thing? The biggest issue is prioritizing the areas of action, and Business Propel is starting to have a profound influence along that. What are the top 3 things that we should be focusing on? So in conjunction with this, we're now just starting to establish action plans to work out what we can control, what alternatives we have to choose between, and to create roles and responsibilities for the team. Core to underlying this is we have to know what we're going to do to the vineyard, what interim produce we're going to create in the sense of the grape available for an annual vintage, how are we going to take that vintage, how are we going to capture its value in terms of creating a premium product, and where we're going to determine sell that wine for the ultimate best reward for the business. So in the sense of this, we've had to go back to basics and start trying to document and start probably establishing a database and also process map our business. The property is located in an area where water isn't a bad problem, but do we want water? Because water into grapes means volume. Are we after volume or after quality? The actual pruning of the grapes post-harvest, the timing of it, the weather relevant around it, allied to whether we do it by hand or machine. And then there's a whole seasonal set of issues on what do we do about land maintenance, how we go and support the growth of the product in the sense of nutrients. Do we want to be organic or not organic? How do we react to the influence of every basically primary production activity of being a gambling event on the rains and that sort of thing? When we get to achieve a yield and objective and a quality, we then come to a very commercial issue. How do we harvest it, by hand or by machine? The actual grape variety is a unique one. Its quality is well recognized. So the gaining of that product from the field into being the crush straight away and the time critical issues are something which comes back to all of us in any aspect of business. Are there things that are just JET, you don't have time, the resultant juice, and then is it of a quality of leaving it as perhaps a bubbly or not a bubbly? Do we leave it in still for a while? What do we do with it while it's sitting in the still in terms of temperature? Aging in wood, the variety of French versus American oak, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years in wood. When it comes to the bottling, this starts to look at basically the market presentation, because we've got to worry about the cost of the bottle, but the style of the bottle. Do we leave it on the shelf for a period? But all of these things come to a head sometimes years or months in front of where we will be. As sales and our marketing, we know we have a quality grape. We know we can grow it in a quality location. We're creating a quality product. So how do we go and tell our story as a brand and an image to provide what we want to show as our unique selling proposition? The markets, do we sell in Australia? Or do we go to markets where perhaps the variety of the grape, the variety of treatment of the grape as creating the wine has a unique capacity? The remarkable part about that is if you go into some of these markets, the taste for the product in terms of the flavour, etc., feeds back into how you focus your manufacturing process, because the nature of the wine and the relative palates of a Western or an Eastern palate comes into the story. The unique selling advantages, well, they're pretty simple. A husband and wife who are multicultural, selling into a multicultural location, who walk the ground every day of their vineyard, have hands-on roles in producing the wine right up until opening it in front of you at a wine show. Pretty unique selling proposition. So what's your story about that in terms of the way that you look at your own business? Do you know what you're selling to and what market you're choosing? So where are we? We have an exceptionally high quality PIR. We know its age. We're selling it with age and pedigree. We're choosing a price point. We're choosing a market segment. More importantly, and this is where perhaps not being an Anglo-Saxon, some people working in Asia have got more capacity to deal with it. The sales and marketing team have got the gumption to ask for cash up front, removing a lot of trade risk in terms of dealing overseas. Mm-hmm. So out of this, what have we done? We've now documented from the land to the grape being opened as a wine sitting on display at a trade show somewhere in Asia. We have gotten to know, to understand what's involved in this process. Whilst the vigneron has got decades of experience and his partner has fantastic marketing experience, both of them walking the property over the last several years, being involved intensely in the manufacturing process, has rounded out their knowledge of what they do to create their product to sell to a specific market. It's let them reflect on the influence of that market back on how the way they present that product, etc. So knowing your market, knowing your product, and how to deal with all of that became a very important issue. But what has come from that is we now know the activities around the business. We're starting to understand the real costs of some of those things.
And before we go on, we're going to run a poll right now. So if everyone looks to the left, you'll see there's a poll about to be published called "Do you know the real cost of running your business?" It's live now, so it's to your right. It's a poll. We'll just give it a couple seconds. Some results coming through now. So a few equal splits between yes and I know most costs, but not others. And I think that goes through what people were discovering with this business is even though they were experienced in marketing and making wine, there was other things that were coming through that they had no idea that was there.
You're right, Joel, in the sense of even just the matter of presentation of the product with a label and an image, where we went down a journey early on in the acquisition to achieve something, we probably got about 3 out of 10 when the influence and the designs were left to people advising from an Australian context, and the right cultural sensitivity and other aspects were not involved in the whole thing. One of the most interesting wine stories was in terms of one of the major companies decades ago was having trouble selling corked wine in Asia. So they started selling the wine with a corkscrew, or more positively, to increase their sales apparently in the Japanese market, they went and used a Stelvin cap solely for the Japanese market because the customer could finally open the wine. 25% increase in sales overnight.
Wow.
So they're the sorts of things which, in terms of knowing what comparatively small cost can bring as a reward, in terms of this product, it refers here to rejuvenation of the vineyard and the core aspects of our business. How are we treating our core manufacturing process and putting our inputs and dealing with our inputs? How do we choose what those are? And every action we take creates a cost. Picking by machine versus picking by hand. Quantity, rough hewn, softly done, delicately done, boutique, unique, premium pricing and branding. Left in wood, aged, coming out with pedigree, etc. The image of the wine and all of those sorts of things come behind to go and try to pick up on all of these aspects, and the sales process, etc. So basically, we're looking at how every aspect of this, in the sense of the viticultural approaches, affects the final product presented between the marketplaces. In terms of the hand picking, what are the implications? Hand pickings are around about 5 to 1 in terms of cost of a machine pick. Most of your machine picking is done early morning or even during the dark hours, and there's lighting everywhere. Getting a team of people into your fields at 3 in the morning to hand pick at the optimum time, etc. Left in wood, in terms of what its applications is, it costs a lot more to leave wine each year in storage. You've got the storage costs. Accidentally, because it's a wine, you've got the tax consequences for GST in terms of the wine taxes, etc. What are we doing in terms of the quality versus the processes? All of these things are increasing the cost of our product. In terms of the market presentation, as I've referred to, we have had to take very serious looks at how one presents the labels, the bottle, the style, so your market's feeding back into it. A cultural diversity and the propensity of this couple to visit the specific markets and to market to a specific niche group of customers in a specific way has become a very significant priority, but it takes time. And one of the things you've got to work about time is you can't do it all. So they're now having to start to think about who is going to do what. So their people skills and people team building is going to become a major issue shortly.
And of course, most of these things can relate to any manufacturer in Australia, any business, with manufacturing the quality, say the quality of the steel being used, of the product being used, and the material being used.
Yeah, and it's also a matter of how do I go and show that product, package that product so that I present it properly. We've all heard the rumours of stories of certain numbers, colours, etc., going from Europe to Asia or Asia to Europe, yep, being an insult on the relevant marketplace because you didn't do good research.
Mm-hmm.
So the cultural realities and all the rest sometimes can save you money. Sometimes they can add to your costs of business. So in the sense of our working capital, one of the things we're having to look like you would, whether it's basically a small aluminium extrusion plant or a wheat or sheep or anything else like that in terms of meat products, or even just trying to export flowers or something like that, you've got to worry about what's it going to cost me? Do I need it to get to the market quickly? Hence, I've got to go and put up with freight costs, which to get the food to be fresh in the marketplace is extraordinary. And if I'm not close to a distribution centre, what does it mean to me? So those realities of where I'm selling and how I present myself in those marketplaces are a very, very major issue. And listening in Asia, I can tell you now, we aren't really well respected in terms of the way we do our presentation because we're trying to sell to a premium market, perhaps not with the premium packaging. Perhaps we've got a lot to learn there.
Yeah. So the packaging makes a massive difference when it comes to
sales penetration. Yeah.
Penetration.
So out of what we've done on our process mapping, we have achieved a lot in the sense of we're now starting to understand what is our costs of our business. We're starting to work out how we allocate those costs because I've got a team of now 2 emerging to 4. How do I deal with all of those costs?
And there's one more poll running now as Michael's going on. Okay.
How do I deal with the recording of that information? So because of certain aspects of being in fields, etc., and being in the hills area, mobile telephony is sometimes unreliable. Manual records have turned out to be a major problem. So these chaps have just gone to the extent of building their own app over the last 12 weeks to implement, to go and record and provide fundamental contractor information, in-field information, so that they're starting to build up a litany of data on the temperature, the time of the month, etc., soil condition, and also what they're doing. So if I've got 4 people wandering around over the 5-month to 6-month period of December to now, how much is growing cost? How much is picking cost, harvest cost, crush cost, and initial cost? And by using a cloud-based accounting system, we've found that we're actually able to pull things together. So we have also, in the context of the previous habits, never really fully costed this vineyard's cost of operation because it was you do a little bit for me, I'll do this a little bit for me between the former partners. So there's been an issue of now we don't know what the real costs were. So we're now fully understanding the cost of doing everything. So recognizing somebody's helping me out, okay, I'll do a contract with you. Well, that's great, but what does that represent in terms of my value chain? The whole part of the vineyard and some of the stuff we're now doing in terms of oak or that sort of thing, what's an operating cost and what's a reinvestment cost? The value of what I'm spending the money on. And also in the sense of where we're going, we just have to establish constant measurements and KPIs. So what we're doing is we've gone and got our basic financial statements under control by going to a cloud-based scenario. We're going to project-based costing for a whole pile of things, and everything's being put together. We're recording the information consistently. For a stock on hand, we have a large value of stock. We know what the future holding costs are, but we also now have to assess if there is a certain vintage, what's it tasting like, What's the volume of it? Is it of the right premium? And we've got to assess whether or not we should or perhaps need to be driven to, because of just economic issues, taking cash into the bank from the grape stock and wines that currently be there. So basically that, along with the vintage to bottle focus, but we've just got to make sure we have all of these costs completely under control.
And this is introducing some tools to help with the business and help manage.
Yeah, and so one of the things that's come out of the Propel analysis is this couple, even though they're very interested in everything they're talking about, unless they take deliberate action to convert their stock into cash, every aspirational aspect we have in the sense of viticultural activity inside the vineyard, aging of stock, time of picking and method of picking, all of those opportunities are only supported by cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
The other biggest lesson is the CEO and is also the head viticulturist and head winemaker. He's what I call the three-ring circus master. He's probably trying to do too much. So what we're having to learn to do is how to outsource things. And if we start outsourcing things by engaging in perhaps total resource acquisition, we might have to employ people, or do we subcontract? Do we do it onshore versus offshore? Some of the marketing activities probably lend themselves to global resources. So we really do need to have a very good look at all of those sorts of things and control costs.
It sounds like a lot of small businesses, you've got the person who's the owner of the business, being the accountant, HR, bookkeeper, and the wife maybe running the show. You know what I mean?
It is, and so this is a business which over the next 3 to 5 years can probably quadruple its size. Is that a good idea? Does it want to be 4 times its size? Because one of the issues which we've been looking for is we've just gone and done an exercise on what it costs to create a product. One of the things that we've alluded to along the way is that this couple, because of their cultural capacity, their unique growing position and climate, and the varietal of grape, actually have the chance to move into an extraordinary market position. Most small businesses are best classified as a price taker, especially as we expand, respectively to some of the national sales and distribution relationships. Being a boutique goods producer and being offered an opportunity to take my leather handbags or my tomato sauce into Coles and Woolworths has so many costs associated with it that can be, if I do it in isolation, the worst decision I can make, because basically one finds that the price point comes under pressure and there's a whole pile of other things which are detrimental to my overall viability.
Yeah, and it sounds like the cost of the manufacturer, the demand on these distribution channels would be massive.
It is. So basically, where are we here? Well, basically, in our pricing, we're looking at when we collect the grapes, if somebody will offer us an exceptional price for the crop, do we go and sell it rather than produce? What do we do about the age of the wine versus the premium price we try to sell for? But more importantly, because we actually have a unique product in a unique market, we need to actually know where we're going. So where we've achieved is we now have a continuous business improvement process capable of being considered to being implemented. We have information which we can compare things about. We now have analysis of information from which we can make a decision versus making a decision in the shower, which is an issue for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
We now know in the marketplace that's been chosen what the competitors are doing. So we're moving ourselves into a really unique position. So what have we done? We've chosen a market niche. And the way I use we is here is as their advisor, you find yourself drawn into a lot of this as conversations, conference calls, etc. We're focusing on the Northern Asian cultural ties of a specific market because it's a Monty and a natural in the sense of the personality of one of the couple. we're concentrating on creating customer wine shows in that sovereignty. To create a more premium view, we're also inviting key distribution relationships for farm visits back in Australia. All of this has got long-term costs. So we're positioning it all in the long term as a super premium product, limited annual quantity, and specific attributes. Pricing, well, here's our price. It's COD, and it's from warehouse, and basically it's heading towards $100 Australian a bottle. And the projections are that probably in 2 years' time, it'll hold its price and it'll be having a quantity problem.
Which a quantity problem might be a great thing, because it could create scarcity in any business too.
And that's where this product will emerge, hopefully, as a price maker versus a price taker.
Mm-hmm.
But underneath all of this, what's happening in each of the areas of strategy and sales and marketing, we're actually able to use the action plans within the Business Propel scenario to create viable 90-day action plans. And we're running at around about 45% success in implementing things in a timely manner.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we're trying to do is make sure we're choosing less and acting more. So the guilt trip implicit in the Business Propel action plan deadlines is a very good way, and the open community of it as the advisor, the roles and responsibilities, etc., has enabled us in some senses to include some new staff with specific responsibilities in certain areas for them to be engaged in where we're going so they can see where we want to take the business, but also have them with specific responsibilities and specific expectations.
Yeah. How important is it to have a deadline on these action plans and where businesses are going?
It's very important. It's gotten very important, especially in the sense of our marketing scenario, because we want to go and create this premium product. We have to infuse in there, because marketing is one of the areas that's being outsourced fairly quickly. We need to keep those people engaged and heading in the right direction so that they know what we want, why we want them, and we have to infuse them into knowing what it is in the context of cultural issues within the marketplace, etc., which are major influences on how and what you do in your production line.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it doesn't matter what you're producing. So where we are here is we've got a lovely product, and their market research since taking over the vineyard and the winery is, yes, we like your product. Yes, we want to buy it. And that's given them the conviction and now the confidence to actually be, it's not probably the right way to put it expressly, but have the attitude of being positive, perhaps arrogant, about their price point, their terms of trade, and how they go about it. Their terms of trade, in the sense of where they are, they need the money to help them reinvest in anything. They need the money in two senses. One, the product they're selling off, and two, in the sense of just the holding costs. For you to be able to go and have 2 dozen on storage for 2 years versus 1 dozen, having the cash flow available from selling product quickly helps you achieve all of that. So that vitality of cash flow cycle and its measurement and its implications of terms of trade have been a harsh lesson to come to grips with very early on. From this winery's point of view, the real reality is, having found their overseas market, having been left with an acquisition of having a bit of the Irish rainbow pot of gold at the end there with the existing wine stock, which is aged, has been dealt with respect and with quality, and accidentally finding some 8 to 9 year old gems I'd forgotten about, which is sort of, say, the odd pallet load, turning those into high dollars at high prices with the dollar ruling is going to have to be the thing they do. So where are we? We're selling a product at a premium price. We're only selling in AUD. We want a deposit on order. We want the cash before it goes out the door. The short-term cash issues emerging as what wines are not worth holding. In evaluating that, we're talking about quality. We're talking about the confrontation of cash flow needs. we've got to pay the bills next week. So some of those wines that might be all right in 3 years' time appear to have a demand right now as a younger wine versus an older wine. So what are we going to do? How do we go and sell some of those in to a market, or do we choose a different market? So some of these things on the price points are actually starting to come home. But basically, we need to cash in, and we need to get there in a way that it's sustainable. This season's crop, and achieved from, say, 2010, is actually this year's mature product, premium priced. The 2015 product perhaps happens to be the band-aid for cash flow for immediate capacity to survive. And we're having to make price points, issues being evaluated issue by issue, and also the profitability of each of those vintages. So we know, if we hold the data on that, we know the yield in the season. Roughly, we don't have the information we really need, because in 2012, 13 and 14, there's not enough information to say, right, each quarter was. Wine's normally been influenced by the weather and the volume of water. So was the rains in the June quarter, the September quarter, and the December quarter good, bad, or indifferent? Did we actually harvest by hand or by machine then? And those sorts of missing information mean that we're not actually making good decisions about some of that wine stockpile. We're making decisions by need versus aspiration. So it's getting to be a very interesting scenario. But the issue that's been very good about all of this is the clients have always reached out for help. They have, out of the Business Propel analysis, probably been dealt one really ice cold bucket of water. They now are starting to recognize their limitations. The first limitation is they can't do it all. So they're starting to search for help. The other part, recognizing that they don't know. They recognize that their road to their future has potholes of lack of experience or knowledge around it. They're gathering together a informal board of advice. That board of advice has now got some aspects which are starting to reach out into Business Propel over the remainder of this calendar year. So we really are starting to achieve things. Where will we be? Hopefully, that wine stock will be cashed in 2 years. The accidental outcome of that is they'll actually own the vineyard. Not a bad 5-year plan.
Very good. And that's relative to any business out there. We can literally replace the wine with any service or product. And it will be sort of exactly the same thing.
It is, because basically the capacity to have the working capital behind you, they have a unique scenario. So you need a bank of money to enable you to fund the activities. You need to prioritize the action plans, but you need to evaluate those action plans for their impact. And you need to measure or recognize the signs of when you need to let go. So by using what we're doing now in the sense of having Business Propel supporting them with certain timelines, we're talking every 2 to 3 weeks. We're giving each other guilt trips of why haven't you managed to achieve that? And no excuse is bad. It's just a matter of recognizing you've made a commitment to yourself to achieve something. And by doing that, you're just slowly increasing and improving things. And as I said earlier in one of the slides, it's the Japanese psychology of the 1,001%, or in the more sarcastic comment, how do we eat an elephant? One mouthful at a time. And that's what the business improvement process is all about. And that can apply to the local fish and chip shop or to a $20 million business.
How do you think, as a business owner, being like wearing multiple hats in the business and doing everything, where do they find the time to engage someone, or even start looking for someone? Even going through Business Propel, you know what I mean? Because that's another time suck. It's one more thing. One more thing burning in their business right now.
The competition for time's been robust. We have had to make decisions about what we prioritised. The biggest issue now is actually getting the existing owners to start documenting up some things, which includes procedures and roles. By learning to understand what's happened in the business, we've identified time periods where we know we need to subcontract in resources. In this case, it happens to be cyclical. There are certain things in harvest where it is absolutely absurd for one of the owners of the business to be driving the tractor while the grapes are being picked, even though he loves it. So the challenge for that individual is to get off the tractor, get out into the marketplace, or to watch quality control, but also to write up a job specification and an expectations of output from that role, and then find the person who can fit the team and be a good value-added person. And probably if they're going to succeed in this business, they will need a team of 2 to 4 who will have to become long-term permanent or casual employees or seasonal employees, but for whom they can provide a reward for those individuals' personal values and personal life. So this is all coming back to being a matter of knowing it, creating delegation, and all those sorts of issues. And it's working through people, which will be, apart from the cash flow, the biggest lesson that this couple have to learn.
Cash flow. Okay. Great. Michael, how do people find out more about you, KMT Partners? How can you help? Obviously, they can find more information about you on the Business Propel website, and there's a link to your actual consultant profile for KMT Partners. And of course, people, you can write a message in the chat box, and Michael did recommend that can have a free 30-minute session with any business.
Yeah, look, like everybody engaged in the Business Propel community, we're all basically trying something new. We'd love to hear from anybody anywhere, in the sense of if they want to have a feedback session about how to go about using Business Propel, what it can do for you. If they want to have a talk about a specific problem, one of my biggest problems is I love to blow the breeze and talk about something. So if you want 30 minutes to have a chat, my phone number's there, my email's there. And we chat with businesses across the Asia Pacific quite often, in many, many areas across a diverse range of industries. And what we do seek to do, though, is as an accounting group, we recognise what we don't know. And the thing about having the Business Propel community around us is we've got access to a wonderful group of consultants who have sometimes specific, very deep niche expertise, but at least industry expertise in areas where, candidly, as an accountant, I flounder. So it's good to work with people.
Excellent. If anyone has any questions, please let us know. We might not get time to answer them now, as we're over time already, but Michael will be happy to actually respond to any questions offline or through the phone. So please don't hesitate to contact Michael either through email, phone, or through Business Propel. Thank you, Michael.
A pleasure, Philip.
Excellent. And don't forget, everyone, we have our another webinar coming up very soon from the Business Propel Masterclass. Please remember to look at our events page on Business Propel, and looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. Enjoy your lunch.